You are watching AI Storytelling, YTS.
What if the most terrifying diagnosis wasn't found in a medical textbook? What if the thing haunting the sterile, white hallways wasn't a disease, but a presence? Hospitals are places of life and death, a thin veil between this world and the next. And sometimes that veil tears. Tonight, we investigate 3 cases where the line between clinical reality and paranormal nightmare blurred forever. These are the stories the staff try to forget. Stories based on true events. St. Margaret's Charity Hospital, established in 1912, was a beacon of hope for a small Midwestern town for nearly a century. But by the winter of 2003, it was a dying relic. The paint was chipping, the equipment was outdated, and the north wing had been closed for years. This is where our story begins with a dedicated, if somewhat skeptical, night shift nurse named Laura. Laura was a woman of science. She'd seen death, miracles, and everything in between. She believed in what she could see, touch, and measure. But her belief system was about to be shattered during a long, understaffed weekend. It started not with a ghost, but with a smell. On her 3rd night that week, as she made her rounds at 3:17 a.m., a wave of putrid, sweet decay hit her in the hallway outside room 304. It was the unmistakable scent of rotting flesh. The room, however, had been empty for months. The door was locked. When she reported it to security, they found nothing. The air was clear. They blamed it on the old plumbing. But 2 nights later, the calls began. The patient call light for room 304 would illuminate on the central board. A solid, unwavering red dot. Each time Laura or a security guard would go to the room, it was dark, locked, and silent. The electrician found no fault in the wiring. It was, he said, impossible. The phenomena escalated, and we have the evidence to prove it. But what a new nurse captured on her phone one night gave them a face to the fear. This is a still from a video taken by a nursing student who quit the next day. Look at the eyes. They seem hollow, desperate. The hospital administration dismissed it as a prank, a reflection. But Laura knew. She had seen that face in the window herself, just for a split second during her rounds. Pause the video. Look at the shape in the window. What do you see? A trick of the light? Or a person who simply shouldn't be there?
I'm telling you, I did a sweep. Room 304 was locked. I checked the handle myself. But on my way back, I heard it. A voice. A little girl, clear as day, from inside the room. She said, "He won't let me leave."
This testimony from a veteran security guard was corroborated by a second guard on duty. Both were former military, not prone to fantasy. The voice of a child in a room that was sealed shut. On Laura's final night, the call light for 304 was lit again. Frustrated and terrified, she marched to the room, not to enter, but to stand outside and demand answers. As she stood there, the metal door handle began to rattle, violently, as if someone on the other side was trying desperately to get out. Then, from the gap under the door, a single piece of paper slid out, stopping at her feet. It was a patient intake form from 1978. The name was scratched out, but in the box for condition, one word was written in a shaky, frantic hand: trapped. St. Margaret's was demolished in 2008, but the mystery remains. What was the presence in room 304? Here are some theories revolving around. The logical explanation: a complex cocktail of sleep deprivation, high stress, and suggestion, combined with faulty wiring and coincidental sounds from the old building's infrastructure. Or the tragic ghost, the spirit of a child who died tragically in the hospital decades prior, unable to move on, her energy occasionally manifesting and interfering with electrical systems. Or the malevolent imposter, something older and darker that attached itself to the hospital's history of death, masquerading as a child to lure in the living. Our second story takes us to a state-of-the-art regional trauma center. Its burn unit was renowned for its success, a place of cutting-edge science and immense human resilience. Here, we meet David, a patient recovering from severe injuries sustained in a house fire. He was sedated, intubated, and unable to speak. His only means of communication were the blinks of his eyes and the scrawls of a weak hand. As David began his long road to recovery, he started to become agitated. He would scribble the same phrase over and over on his notepad. At first, the nurses thought it was the ramblings of a traumatized mind. But the phrase was always the same, written in a shaky, desperate script, "The man in the smoke." They assumed he was reliving his trauma. But then, the night nurse reported a new, chilling detail. She claimed that the heart monitor for the patient in the room next to David's would occasionally spike erratically whenever David became distressed. There was no medical connection between the two patients. The descent into this particular horror was documented not by cameras, but by the unshakable testimonies of the staff. The official logs, obtained through a source, show a pattern. On nights when David was most agitated, other patients in the unit would report the same specific hallucination: a tall, thin man standing in the corner of their room, smelling of soot and ash. These patients had no connection to each other and were suffering from different ailments. They couldn't have shared this delusion. How do you explain a shared hallucination among strangers? Coincidence? Or something being broadcast from a single, terrified source? But the most compelling and terrifying piece of evidence came when David finally regained his voice.
He stands in the corner. He doesn't have a face. It's just dark and swirling, like smoke.
What does he whisper, David?
He whispers. He says, "You didn't get out. I'm still breathing the smoke. And I'm so cold."
And for David, finally, he recovered physically and was discharged. But before he left, he gave his primary nurse a drawing. It was a crude sketch of his hospital room. In the corner, where no visitor ever stood, was a tall, shadowy figure drawn entirely in black charcoal. From its featureless head, a single word was written in a speech bubble: "Soon." David moved away and cut all contact. The other patients eventually recovered and stopped seeing the figure. The phenomenon ended. But what was it? Theories by the people working there. A mass psychogenic illness. A form of social contagion where the stress and suggestion of one patient's trauma spread unconsciously to other vulnerable individuals in the same environment. Or a residual haunting. A psychic imprint of the fire that injured David. A loop of traumatic energy that replaying itself and affecting those with a heightened sensitivity to pain and fear. Or a parasitic entity, a non-human presence that feeds on suffering, drawn to the intense pain in the burn unit, using David as a conduit to amplify its influence and feed on the fear of others. Our final story is the oldest and perhaps the most disturbing. The Ridgewood Asylum closed its doors in 1985 after a series of scandals about patient treatment. It was left to decay, a monument to forgotten souls. The only human contact came from a lone, elderly caretaker named Arthur, who lived in a small cottage on the edge of the property, tasked with keeping vandals out. Arthur was a quiet, private man, but his reports to the property management company became increasingly strange. He wasn't complaining about vandals. He was complaining about the nighttime routines. He claimed that every night, at precisely 1 a.m., he would hear the distinct sounds of the asylum coming back to life. The clatter of a food cart down the hall of the East Wing, The squeak of a gurney's wheel in the surgical theater, and the faint, chaotic sound of dozens of radios all tuned to static. The management dismissed it as the ravings of an old man, until the day Arthur disappeared. When police searched his cottage, they found nothing out of place. But when they entered the main asylum building, they found Arthur's legacy. He had been documenting the phenomena for years. Arthur's journals were meticulous. He logged times, sounds, and temperatures. But the entries grew more frantic. The last entry, dated the day he vanished, read, "They are not echoes. They are rehearsals. They are practicing for something. I think they see me now." The man in the upper window today, he smiled. But it was the cassette tapes that sealed the case's infamy. Arthur had left a portable recorder running in the main hall. The tape contains hours of silence, broken by the sounds he described. But at the very end of the final tape, there is a new sound. That breath was not Arthur's. What was being dragged? And who, or what, was breathing into that microphone, knowing it was being recorded? Arthur was never found. The police investigation went cold. The ultimate discovery was made by urban explorers 2 years later. In the asylum's basement morgue, they found a single, recent footprint in the dust next to an old slab. And on that slab, placed neatly in the center, was Arthur's key ring. The case was closed as a presumed accident or death by misadventure, but the evidence suggests a more sinister end. So, what happened to the caretaker of Ridgewood Asylum? Did a tired, lonely old man simply get lost in the vast building he was meant to protect? Did he fall victim to the dangerous structure itself? Or did the rehearsals he wrote about finally become a premiere, with Arthur as the unwilling star of the show? The police ruled it a death by misadventure, but the evidence suggests something else entirely. So I have to ask you, hoax, a tragic accident, or something truly supernatural? Let me know your final verdict in the comments. These 3 stories remind us that there are diagnoses beyond our medical charts, and that some scars are not visible to the naked eye. The mystery is what keeps us searching for answers. If you like these stories, don't forget to subscribe AI Storytelling YTS. Hit that bell icon so that you won't miss the latest updates. Feel free to comment and share. Thanks for watching, and see you soon in the next mind-blowing video.